You're listening live to Rightside Radio with Phil Williams. It's hard to go wrong when you're on the right side. Rightside Radio. Solid, conservative, and just plain right.
Alabama's syndicated news talk leader, Rightside Radio. Phil Williams here live in the Rightside Studios. Man, we got the local, the state, the national, all the issues. We cover down solid, conservative, and just plain right. Well, it is Monday before Christmas. Just the Monday before Christmas, and Boomer's on the board. Hey, buddy, how you doing?
Hey, good. Great weekend.
It was.
Awesome Christmas parties.
We did.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so now I'm ready for the week.
Oh, well, and I'm sure your little ones are ready for Santa Claus to come.
Oh, they are. They are very excited.
Is Daddy and Mommy ready for Santa Claus to come?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay, good.
I am ready. I'm ready. I've talked to Santa. He's got everything he's needed to get, and he's ready to go.
And listen, I got to tell y'all, you had never been to a Christmas party until you've been to one where Boomer wears the abominable snowman suit the entire time. And how much weight did you lose walking around wearing that thing?
A lot. I was burning up the entire time, but honestly, it was well worth it. I always like my character Christmas party.
Yeah.
And it's fun to dress up and have a good time with friends. And
it was a good
family.
time.
It was great.
It was a good time. Well, thank you, brother. All right. Hey, listen, we got a great show lined up for you today. Got some good stuff here. 3 o'clock today. He's been a guest host on this show before. He actually has his own show. And he and I served in the legislature together. I'm talking about former state senator Scott Beeson. He'll be on with me at 3 o'clock. I have him on today because it ties directly in to part of our Triple Dipper. Scott was the one of the authors and co-sponsors of a major piece of immigration legislation that we passed in 2011. And, man, I'm going to tell you right now, that was some more kind of debate, and the protests we had in the hallways and the threats that we took and, the lampooning the liberal media gave us. And now look at where we are. States had to take action. We did. We got enjoined in court immediately. And look at what's happening right now. So, yeah, we're going to talk to former state Senator Scott Beeson at 3 o'clock. You're going to want to hear that conversation. And then that all ties into the Triple Dipper, so hit it, bud.
The Triple Dipper. 3 stories you've got to know.
That's right, the Triple Dipper, 3 stories, 3 themes, if you will, that you have got to know. So number 1 ties right into that conversation with Scott Beeson. We're going to talk about the border crisis because, folks, it's getting really, really, really bad, and it's not even. And I say that knowing that it was already bad, but the bad that we've had, which was already at record levels, is about to become perhaps even twice what we've been looking at with Title 42 being lifted this Wednesday. They're tracking groups of 10 and 15,000 each headed to the border, and the Border Patrol is completely feeling disenfranchised right now. So the border crisis, yep, that's number 1. We're going to spend some time dissecting that, talking about what can be done, what hasn't been done, and what states can do. So, yep, number 1, Triple Dipper, border crisis. Number 2, CRT in education. That's critical race theory. Oh, that again? Oh, yeah, that again. Listen, man, I got some audio for you. What's amazing to me is this whole premise of that's just a law school concept. They allow people to debate. It's not real. Shit, oh, come on. It is real. Not only that, it's being taught as unequivocal and non-debatable. We're going to talk about it. Why is critical race theory a part of mandatory curriculum in medical schools? You heard me. We'll talk about that. Number 2 in the Triple Dipper, CRT in education. And then number 3, I didn't get to it Friday, so we'll do what we can today. Live free or die. That's number 3. Live free or die. Boomer gets fired up when I say that. My gun guy, brother.
I love it.
So the plan is right now, number 3 on the Triple Dipper, live free or die. What are the latest attempts by the left to attack our Second Amendment rights? We'll cover down, and I'll let you know. All right, well, listen, that's the show as it's laid out for now, but as always, I start with my own monologue. So let me just kick over into that real quick, all right? Listen, I'll start off by saying this. We've all had times when we had to rob Peter to pay Paul. And by that I mean that I'm sure that most folks listening to this have had those days where paying one bill meant not paying another. Or for that matter, maybe you had times when some very important bills, they got paid on a credit card or something like that. It can be extremely frustrating, and if you're not careful, it can get away from you in a hurry. To this day, I'm not sure how our family made it through my late in life decision to go to law school. I mean, there I was in my early 30s already, with a wife, 2 kids, a dog, and a mortgage. And now I go to law school? But with careful application of a second mortgage on the house, a little bit of GI Bill, 2 very modest day job paychecks, and a credit card, the shell game played out for 3 years. We used the credit card to pay for daily trips to Birmingham to go to class, pay down the balance as best we could, draw from the credit line to pay tuition when the GI Bill was short, pay it back down, then draw it again when the regular paycheck got irregular. It was 3 years, 3 years of financial tightrope walking, but God was faithful. I graduated, and somehow the light stayed on and the kids always had Christmas. And I'll be honest with you, though, Charlene was often the miracle worker. She literally used to sit down every month and plan out every dinner for the next month, every last one. And then she would take stock of what we had in the cupboard, and she'd make a shopping list for all the rest. I remember once being in a group of friends, and someone was complaining about the cost of groceries, and I was telling them how Charlene handled our groceries, and they were impressed, but their appreciation turned to shock when I told them that she fed the whole family of 4 and the dog for like $250 a month. One lady said, "My word, I spend that every week." Well, I'll be honest with you. That was part of the miracle of getting through 3 years of law school. There weren't many vacations, but the kids always had new clothes for school, and truthfully, we didn't lack for anything. In my recollection, there was a lot of laughter in the house, and we have said many times that we don't take it for granted, not by a stretch. But what I just described to you is what so many others have done or are doing now. And the Biden economy has made that even more pronounced in the last year with inflation hitting 40-year highs. But Charlene and I learned firsthand what it means to live within our means. Do we have some debt? Sure, we're still paying the mortgage on our beautiful home. But generally speaking, we're doing what many of you are doing. We're trying to live within our means. Unless, of course, you're the federal government. Because apparently the federal government is allowed to operate in what they call a spending deficit at every single turn. I mean, deficit spending is a term that every American should know firsthand. It is literally defined as, are you ready? Quote, government spending in excess of revenue of funds raised by borrowing rather than from taxation. All right, the bottom line is that where Charlene and I threaded that financial needle to get through law school with the understanding that every dime of debt incurred would have to be repaid, Congress does not feel that same pinch. Deficit spending is illusory. It presents to the world the false notion that you've got it when you don't. It is spending more than you've got, but somehow in the halls of Congress that's allowable, again and again and again. Every year, the United States government collects revenue from taxes and spends it on public programs and agencies. And if in any given year it spends more than it earns, its yearly budget will result in a deficit. So to cover the deficit, the U.S. Treasury has to borrow money, selling securities and treasury bills and notes and bonds and savings bonds. Just like an individual who spends more than what he earns will have to borrow from the missing amount on the credit card, the accumulated deficits, though, year after year, form what we call the outstanding U.S. national debt. And there truly is no real plan to repay it. You know, just spend it like you got it. Well, this week, a number of moderate Republicans, including Alabama's Richard Shelby, are joining with Democrats in the U.S. Senate to hammer out the latest omnibus spending bill. It's a predicted $1.65 trillion spending extravaganza that comes at a time when the national debt already sits at roughly $30 trillion. And it got me to thinking, has there ever been a government leader in modern U.S. history who worked to reduce our public debt in a meaningful way? You may be interested to know there was. It was President Calvin Coolidge. I read a biography on Coolidge recently, and I came to a real appreciation for the man. His bio from the Coolidge Foundation says some of this. John Calvin Coolidge was born in Plymouth Notch, Vermont on Independence Day of July 4th, 1872. His family led a very simple life, and Coolidge worked from the time he was very young. Coolidge entered the practice of law and politics, and he worked his way up the ladder into Massachusetts state politics and eventually became governor. In 1919, he backed up the police commissioner in Boston when the commissioner was removing all the striking Boston policemen. Coolidge's tough stance on that 1919 Boston police strike drew the national spotlight, and it revealed him to be a man of courage and decisive action. Here's his quote. He said, "There's no right to strike against the public safety by anybody, anywhere, anytime." Well, soon after that, Coolidge was elected Vice President of the United States in 1920. Coolidge succeeded to the presidency upon the sudden death of President Warren G. Harding in August of 23. And Coolidge restored trust and credibility to the office of the presidency. In 1924, he was elected president in his own right. And under Coolidge, and here's my point, under Coolidge, the federal budget was balanced and the national debt was reduced. When Coolidge left office in 1929, the federal budget was actually lower than it was when he arrived at the White House some 67 months before. One of his quotes is, "I am for economy, and after that, I'm for more economy." Well, the nation fared so well under Coolidge. Keep in mind, they didn't have excess spending, but people still prospered. Go figure. The nation fared so well under Coolidge that people spoke of what they called Coolidge prosperity. The Coolidge decade saw great technological advances. This was the decade when many Americans' homes were first electrified and the decade when the automobile became widespread and Charles Lindbergh flew his transatlantic flight. President Coolidge left office wildly popular. He famously chose not to run for re-election in 1928. Get that? He could have run for office again, but he chose not to. His quote was, "The chances of having wise and faithful public service are increased by a change in the presidential office after a moderate length of time." He was a humble man. He even went out and campaigned for his successor, Herbert Hoover, in 1932. And on January 5th of the following year, 1933, he passed away, and he's buried in a simple plot in his family burial ground in Plymouth Notch, Vermont. Listen, I say that story to tell you that here we are in the midst of radical deficit spending. And it is possible, not necessarily easy, but certainly possible, for a visionary leader to address fiscal policy effectively. Now, Coolidge may have lived in a different time, and he certainly didn't take office with all the debt that we currently have on hand, but his principles and his adherence to the principles are timeless. And they are lacking right now as Congress just continues to spend it like they got it. And that's a wrap for the Rightside Way. Yeah, $30 trillion in debt. Good Lord. Stop and think about what that means. Basically, it's potentially possible to never be able to repay that. But we can certainly take stabs at it, and we can stop growing government, and we can stop the massive levels of entitlements and giveaways. Yeah. And, oh, by the way, we can do that without 87,000 new IRS agents. All right, folks, Phil Williams, Rightside Radio. Y'all stay tuned. We'll be right back. And we are back. Phil Williams, Rightside Radio, covering all of North Alabama, solid, conservative, and just plain right. Hey, the text lines are open, by the way, 833-687-4448. That's 833-68-RIGHT. And by the way, that's also our call-in line. You can call in on that number. Before I go to the phones, I will tell you, we got some interesting texts in. Ken from Athens has texted in. He said, perspective on how much $1 trillion is. If someone spent $1 million a day since Jesus walked the earth, they still would not have spent $1 trillion.
Ooh.
That's amazing.
That blows my mind.
I kind of ran the calculator on that a little bit, and I believe he's right.
Oh my goodness.
My calculators aren't doing funny things when I started to add it up, but I'm pretty sure he's right. John from Huntsville, with regards to our Christmas party, wants to know if there was camels at the Christmas party. No, but I do need to post a picture of me with a camel because that's big doings.
Absolutely.
That's right. At another Christmas party. Had a live nativity with a camel. It was kind of cool. What else we got on there? And then Brian from Huntsville, with regards to my wife being the shopper par excellence with regards to our shopping budget. She fed a whole family of 4 and the dog for $250. She said, that's a lot of ramen noodles. Or he said, no, I'm glad your dog liked ramen noodles. That was Brian from Huntsville. And I said, ain't nothing wrong with ramen, but we ate better than ramen. I got a caller on the line. Let me jump over there and grab that real quick. James from Huntsville. Hey, James, how you doing today?
Pretty good, Phil. How you doing?
I'm good, sir. I'm good. What's on your mind?
Well, I was just thinking we could solve this deficit if, the $35 trillion in missing Pentagon assets were just sold to China for $35 trillion, and then we'll let China find the assets, and whenever they can find them, they're theirs.
Wow. You know what? We had several billion of those in Afghanistan alone.
Right. I mean, let's just sell them the missing stuff. Then we won't have to worry about it.
The problem is we may find out that China's already got all that stuff, and that's why it's missing. Who knows?
I didn't think of that.
Well, hey, James.
I'm a ruffian.
Thanks, man.
I listen to you every day.
We appreciate you, man. Have a great week. All right. Line 2. Let me grab that real quick, Booms. Jeff from Indiana. Jeff Rowe, how you doing, man?
I've been better.
Uh-oh.
Sitting for 3 hours with a flat tire in Kentucky.
Oh, man.
I'm running late, man.
It's one of the hazards of your profession, I reckon.
Oh, yeah. It's not much fun.
Well, what's on your mind today, brother?
Well, they're talking about all this money we're spending and everything. We're basically bankrupt already. We just got stupid creditors.
Yeah.
Because would you invest into somewhere that owes that much money?
No, I mean, you know what? I know a guy who, for some reason, can always get the bank to do something extra for him, and I'm thinking, how do you do that, and why do they do that? But that's where we are right now. We're the nation that continually puts our good name against debt, but at some point, you have to recognize that there's only so far that can go.
And a lot of it is paying people to vote or whatever. I don't know, but I walked into a truck stop yesterday, and the subway in there is closed indefinitely because the people just walked out and just said they didn't need a job. So, as long and it can't find anybody to work. Why are we paying people on welfare programs? Why is anybody on unemployment? I want to know, And you got a lot of these commercials now, I hear, about the, getting foreign workers to work the farms and everything. Why would we need anybody to work the farms as long as we got Americans sitting on their butt not willing to work?
Well, that's the problem.
I say kick them off these welfare rolls and kick them out of these unemployment and stuff that, I work every day. I'm working 70 freaking hours a week.
I know. And then even longer when you get a flat tire.
Yeah, this is a 16-hour day for me today, yeah.
Oh, man. All right,
yeah.
Jeff, we're up against the break, brother. You be careful. I'm glad you're back on the road, and we'll talk again soon, all right?
Phil, thank you.
All right, thank you, buddy. Well, all right. Well, that monologue got some reaction, like right off the bat, texts and everything else. And Tyler from Huntsville wants to ask Jeff where he is in Kentucky because I'm headed that way on 65 South. All right, so Jeff, Tyler from Huntsville is willing to meet you for a cup of coffee, I guess. I don't know, but anyway. All right, listen, we're going to take the break here in a second. We're going to come right back. I'm going to switch gears on you. Going to number 1 in the Triple Dipper, the border crisis. And folks, I'm going to tell you, if you think it's been bad, the projections are right now that unless something major occurs in the next 24 to 48 hours, that it's going to get a whole lot worse, which is hard to imagine when you look at some of what we've been seeing on video. And I'm telling you, it's as if, well, we don't even have a border in some places. It's just nothing but a constant stream of mass migration, and it's having a dramatic impact on our nation. And to me, it's probably one of the crises of our time. All right, folks, Phil Williams, Rightside Radio, coming right back. Number one of the Triple Dipper, border crisis. Stay tuned. And we are back. Phil Williams, Rightside Radio, covering all of North Alabama. I'm talking about this show was down south of Birmingham, up north of Huntsville, Tuscaloosa, back over to Gadsden, parts of Georgia, Tennessee, and Mississippi, thrown in just for good measure. By the way, Boomer, in case you haven't noticed, winter came back.
Yes, it did. It's chilly outside, and I love it.
Yeah, so just a reminder. Okay, here's your friendly public service announcement. Make sure you get out there and cover those hose pipes and stuff.
Absolutely.
Like, we're looking at single digits this coming weekend.
Right in time for Christmas.
Right in time for Christmas, and there's a hint of snow.
I know. I'm a little excited. I personally love snow.
Like now that I said the word, the mere 4-letter word, I expect there to be a run on milk and bread at the grocery store.
That's right.
As panic set in.
Just go on and get it, guys.
Williams it's like War of the Worlds. He got on the radio and threw everybody into a panic. But yeah, that's before us right now. A major cold wave coming through, and we're looking at temperatures going down to like 10 degrees in North Alabama in a variety of different areas. So make your plans accordingly.
Yes.
Take care of your pets. Make sure you've got everything lined up in terms of the vents on your crawl space closed, and you got the hose pipes covered up, all that kind of stuff. Winterize your vehicles. Mm-hmm. It's right. Cats and dogs living together, the whole thing's madness and chaos. All right. Hey, a couple of texts before I go there. Dan from Rogersville sent me a picture. He and his family at a live nativity scene had a camel. Love it. Looks good. Looks just like the camel I was hanging out with. Then Joe from Athens asked the questions, can border states not activate their National Guard units? Yes, they do. As a matter of fact, Alabama has been sending some members of our National Guard over to Texas to augment their capabilities. The Texas National Guard has been on the border now for, I think, the better part of a year in what they call Operation Lone Star. So yes, they can. Now, it's a dicey role. You get into a position there where, the Customs and Border Patrol, they're trained for this, and they have certain authorities. National Guard, they are providing more along the lines of surveillance, and then administrative support and medical support, that kind of thing. Live interdiction, arrest, that kind of stuff is, I don't believe, much of a mission for the National Guard right now, mostly because of the potential for, things to go badly. So there's that. And then Jeff from Indiana sent us pictures of his, oh my gosh, he had a blowout. He's like riding on the rim. Jeff, you're a madman. Looks like more like a train wheel than it does an actual tire. Good luck to you, Jeff. All right, listen. Number one of the Triple Dipper, the border crisis. That's the main thing to cover here. And I got to tell you, I'm going to start off with this. So first of all, this show will always be supportive of our men and women in blue, right? And we appreciate you. We appreciate all you do, and we thank you for your sacrifices. And we thank you, by the way, that in the last few years, those of you that have been working through these last few years in law enforcement, you have been through a more turbulent and less appreciated time by too many. So we appreciate you. Well, some of those men and women are actually men and women in green, and they are the Customs and Border Patrol. So the CBP folks that are on the border right now have been stretched so thin and worn down to a nub. And article here from Fox News, dated today, says the Border Patrol Union president says his agents feel completely defeated ahead of Title 42's end. If you're not familiar, Title 42 is the Trump-era legal action that allows for certain people who arrive at the border to be immediately turned back without having any, catch and release in the United States, all that, because they have a failure to abide by certain COVID protocols, or they came from countries where COVID protocols are considered questionable. Anyway, Title 42 is expiring. And on the one hand, I get it. I mean, COVID is, I won't call it over, but the pandemic is not. It's now endemic. It's moved into a place where COVID is still there, but it is not what it was. And COVID pandemic emergency protocols have been pretty much done away with in every capacity. So keeping it under the terms of a COVID protocol is an entirely different thing. And so they're not. But at the same time, though, it was one of the only things, literally, one of the only things that the Biden administration hadn't done away with that gave the Customs and Border Patrol agents a means to reduce the capacity being thrown upon them. So, Fox News story here. The head of the Border Patrol Union is warning that agents are already overwhelmed by the ongoing crisis. Southern border are feeling completely defeated, in his words, ahead of the ending of Title 42 amid widespread fears of an even bigger surge once the public health order ends. He says his name is National Border Patrol Council President Brandon Judd. He says you can go to any station right now, and there's not a whole lot of talk among agents. Used to be there was a lot of camaraderie, a lot of joking, people just happy doing their jobs. There's just nothing now. He said we all feel just completely defeated, like there's no point doing our jobs. We still do it, don't get me wrong, he said. We still go do our job, but we just feel like there's absolutely no point, so it's just really bad. Those are his words. And I don't doubt it. I mean, there have been more than 2.3 million. I mean, do the math. Divide that by 365. 2.3 million migrant encounters at the border in the fiscal year 2022 alone. And fiscal year 2023 is already on track to outpace that number because we started the new fiscal year in October. So what the heck, man? The administration has acknowledged that there will be a surge and has made a $4 billion request for extra funding. It's always about money. How about this? Just enforce the stinking laws you've got. Why does it have to be about money? Well, we're going to have $4 billion more. Well, Judd, again, the guy in charge of CBP's police union or the National Patrol Council, he was dismissive of the administration's claim that they can do something. He said there's no plan. Their so-called 6-point plan is the exact same plan they've been doing for at least a year now. It's completely and totally ineffective. He also said the extra funding, it wouldn't be used for anything except to try and process migrants faster. In other words, they're not doing a thing to staunch the flow. It's like as if somebody had a sucking chest wound and you decided the best thing you could do was to bandage their head. No, they have a sucking chest wound. Well, we're going to make them feel comfortable. They have a sucking chest wound. Well, we're going to put a blanket on them, a little pillow, elevate their feet. It's a sucking chest wound. Well, that's what we have at the border right now. The border has become a sucking chest wound, and the Biden administration is doing nothing but trying to make them comfortable. And he also points out, by the way, the abuse they get from people coming across that border who have a complete disdain for them. He said, daily, the abuse and the stress that faces agents doing their jobs, he said, we get spit at, we get cussed at, we get told by people we take into custody that they're going to rape our wives, kill our children, and you have to put up with that. And then also knowing you're just not accomplishing anything, it just makes it really hard. And I agree. Shame on the Biden administration for this being what it is. I get it if you were doing everything possible and you were still seeing some measure of, difficulty enforcing it, but they're not trying. That's what's so maddening. Story here from Newsmax. Republican Representative Chip Roy. I love Chip Roy. That guy's a firebrand. A member of the Freedom Caucus. Republican Representative Chip Roy says Democrats are using migrants as political pawns. So Republican Representative Chip Roy on Sunday, talking to Newsmax, said that Democrats are using immigrants as political pawns while Americans suffer from the surge of border crossings at the southern border near El Paso, Texas. Keep El Paso in your mind. I'm coming back to that in a minute because El Paso has got its own headlines. He says Democrats want to simply throw some more money at the border and then process more human beings while they're getting abused. They're the ones using them as political pawns for their crass political purposes. They're using the Hispanic community. On Sunday, Roy said that Democrats had shown literally no interest in actually working to try and secure the border. And he says that any bill to try and do a pathway to citizenship is dead on arrival until Democrats will actually talk about securing the border. And rightfully so. Because again, if you got a sucking chest wound, that's in the triage, that's the first order of business. Slap some plastic on that thing, put a compression bandage on it, and get that person into medical care. But the reality is this, they're not doing that. All they're trying to do is take the patient with the sucking chest wound and make them comfortable. And that's all they're doing. Well, Governor Abbott from Texas, he and Governor Ducey from Arizona have really been at the forefront. You've had DeSantis doing some things. You've had other governors step in and do some things. But those two guys are not only doing some things, they are border governors. So of our southern border, Texas, Arizona, California, 2 out of the 3 are actually doing something. Daily Wire, dated yesterday. Governor Abbott sounds the alarm about the end of Title 42. Total chaos and catastrophic, he called it. Folks, I'm just telling you, this shouldn't be this way. You know, I don't know if you listened, before I go back into this article, I don't know if you listened to the show on a regular basis, but not long ago in one of my monologues, I did a piece comparing what we're seeing in our nation today to the things that historians say caused the fall of Rome. And one of the conditions under which some people believe that the Roman Empire finally fell was they could no longer control their borders, and there was a mass migration across their borders of people who overwhelmed their systems. Does that sound familiar? Now, I'm not saying we're going to collapse as a nation tomorrow, but what I'm saying is this is wrong. If you can look at it and say there's a reason why you have borders, and it's okay to allow people in, certainly. We're a nation of immigrants. But how about they come here in the right way, rather than just taking complete advantage of our system and just overwhelming our capabilities? Like, we are an extremely generous nation. And rightfully so, because we have so much. So people obviously want to be a part of what we are and what we have, and I get that. But at what point do we not look them in the eye and go, yeah, but how about you stand in line, please? How about you wait your turn? How about all the people who have been waiting for their visas, who have done it the right way, and you're jumping in front? How about, you know, if you wouldn't put up with this if somebody did that to you in a fast food line. So why is it okay in our immigration system? Well, the answer is it's not. But under Democrat conditions, they would say, if they jumped in front of you in the fast food line, you should let them go ahead and get their food. That's the mentality. Well, they jumped in front of you in the immigration series, so you should go ahead and let them in. And in the meantime, all of you legal people, just wait. Listen, I've got a family member who's a naturalized citizen, and she waited her turn and went through all of the processes. And it was exciting when they got the paperwork done. I'm just saying. All right, Boomer, take us to the break, brother. We'll do that right now. I didn't even scratch the surface on this stuff that I've got. What's El Paso's mayor saying? He just had a declaration. You might want to hear about that. And by the way, how many thousands of illegals are known to be heading in large packs towards the border? I got a number that's going to curl your hair. Y'all stay tuned. Phil Williams, Rightside Radio. We'll be right back. And we are back. Phil Williams, Rightside Radio, covering all of North Alabama. Solid conservative, just plain right. Well, hey, listen, we're in this first section of the Triple Dipper. Before I go too much further, though, I got to tell you, we just got confirmation of another guest we'll have on later in the show. At 4 o'clock today, State Representative Ed Oliver. I have been working with another legislator trying to get him on the show, and he was not able to make it, and he let me know. He said, you might want to check with Ed Oliver on that one. He's worked on that issue a lot. And so we just got confirmation back a few minutes ago that State Representative Ed Oliver will be on the show with us at 4 o'clock talking about critical race theory in education. My recollection is that he is one of the sponsors of what I believe was called the Divisive Topics Bill that was designed to keep CRT and things like that out of the education process. 4 o'clock, State Representative Ed Oliver. Coming up here in a few minutes, we'll have former State Senator Scott Beeson. He and I served together in the legislature. He was the one of the authors and sponsors of illegal immigration reforms that we had in the state of Alabama, which got us in all kinds of mess. I'm just talking about, dang, it became a thing, if you know what I'm saying. I to this day, I think that was. That one, in terms of actual physical protests in the halls of the State House, that one was probably the most significant. People lining the hallways yelling at us. We had people locking arms in the lobby of the Senate floor, trying to keep us from getting to the Senate chamber to vote on bills. I was going down the hallway trying to move through the crowd. Security's having to try and move people out of the way. They're elbowing me in the ribs while I'm going down the hall. It was madness. We passed that bill, though. They took it to court. The courts began to enjoin it, but we'll talk about that with Scott Beeson at 3 o'clock. Hey, right now, you need to know this. So Governor Abbott on Daily Wire, he ain't playing. He says literally in an interview this weekend on ABC News this week, he says if the courts do not intervene and put a halt to the removal of Title 42, it's going to be total chaos. It's going to be catastrophic, not just for Texas, but for the United States of America. That's not rhetoric, by the way. That's a guy who's living it out every single day. That's a guy who is having to use his own executive authorities and work with his legislature to fund their National Guard to help augment what they're doing, to literally be paying good, solid tax dollars, state dollars, to build their own border wall because the federal government won't do it under the Biden administration. So Abbott called on President Joe Biden to enforce the existing laws. Just enforce the laws that are on the books, please. Earlier this month, a federal judge blocked the administration from ending Trump's Remain in Mexico program, which sent some non-migrant Mexican migrants to Mexico while awaiting immigration hearings. He says if the president steps up and does his job required by the Constitution, required by federal courts, and enforces Remain in Mexico, that would have the same level of effectiveness as keeping Title 42 in place. All right, what's it doing to the locals, though? That's the state guy. That's the governor of Texas. How about the mayors and the city councils? How about the folks who are just landowners? How about the people who live down there, who are having to see it and deal with it every single day? Can you imagine? Imagine some of your small communities, or for that matter, just your normal-sized towns. El Paso is not a huge city. It's a big city, but it's not huge. Well, El Paso's mayor just declared a state of emergency. He said it is literally just no longer safe in the city of El Paso. Story here on Fox News, dated yesterday. Officials in the city of El Paso, Texas, have declared a state of emergency as border crossings have overwhelmed their law enforcement personnel. Mayor Oscar Leeser announced the state of emergency during a press conference Saturday, saying he could no longer keep his residents safe. He said, I said from the beginning that I would call it when I felt that either our asylum seekers or our community were no longer safe. Well, they're there. He says by calling a state of emergency, it gives him the ability to be able to do what he couldn't do until he actually declared it. So with that declaration, he's now requesting additional resources and support from the state. They kind of held off, apparently, because he was concerned that the state would come in and take over their local facilities. But he's already met with Governor Abbott, who assured him he would only take action after speaking with the mayor's office, and it would be a partnership. Well, that's a significant movement right there. When a city, hey, hello, President Biden, you have a city that has declared a state of emergency. A true state of emergency. Not a busload of people showed up in New York City and it freaked them out. Not Martha's Vineyard having to figure out what to do with the 52 people. You're talking about a city, El Paso, on your border that is so overwhelmed after 2 years of your administration that they don't know what else to do. Well, story on Town Hall. Town Hall says that according to a report from Customs and Border Protection's intelligence alerts, tens of thousands of illegal migrants are now headed for the country. It says more than 40,000 illegal migrants are said to be staged in the Mexican state of Chiapas along the Mexico-Guatemala border and will soon be knocking on the doors of the U.S. 40,000 of them piled up down there waiting to come in. Additionally, it says nearly 15,000 more illegal migrants from Huachacaca, I believe is what I pronounce it. I don't speak Spanish, are already on their way to the U.S. El Paso, Texas has already encountered more than 7,000 just this past weekend. This past weekend, 7,000 in El Paso alone. While right now we know of 55,000 coming our way. 55,000. Unbelievable. All right, folks. Phil Williams, Rightside Radio. Y'all stay tuned. Right back with State Senator Scott Beeson. We'll talk about it.
You're listening live to Rightside Radio with Phil Williams. It's hard to go wrong when you're on the right side. Rightside Radio. Solid, conservative, and just plain right.
Alabama's syndicated news talk leader, Rightside Radio. Phil Williams here live in the Rightside studios. Man, the local, the state, the national, we got all of the issues covered. And like the dude just said, solid, conservative, and just plain right. Well, we've been in the number one of the triple dipper here for a bit, the border crisis, I'm calling it, and that's exactly what it is. I mean, it's been bad. It got worse under the Biden administration, exponentially worse, like the two record-setting years of all time in the history of years have been the two that the Biden administration has been governing or not governing. And then on top of that, we're looking at 2023 being even worse. And now what we're looking at is that literally they're saying if Title 42 lifts without anything else changing to help mitigate the circumstances at the southern border, that we're looking at literally sometimes upwards of 9,000 to 14,000 per day are the estimates of what the illegal mass migration across our southern border will be. That's epic. Well, I'll tell you what, somebody who's been in the trenches on this issue, and we were there together, but he was the one carrying it on his shoulders, is my friend Scott Beeson, former state senator. Scott Beeson represented Senate District 17, which is Jefferson and St. Clair counties back then. And he now has Scott Beeson Radio on WXJC. He was the co-sponsor of what became known as the Hammond-Beeson bill, which was House Bill 56 back in 2011, that literally dealt with illegal immigration. Without further ado, let me bring on my friend Scott Beeson. How you doing, man?
I'm doing great, Phil. How are you, buddy?
I'm good, man. I'm good. Thanks for making some time for us today.
Oh, absolutely. It's always good to be on your program. I'm glad you're doing well. And in case I forget, I hope everybody listening, and you included, and Boomer, have a very Merry Christmas.
Well, and Merry to you as well, my friend. Thank you so much. Hey, listen, I look back on the 8 years I was in Montgomery, and that House Bill 56, the debate, the committee hearings, the protests in the hallways, the lampooning we got in the press for daring to say something about illegal immigration, that was probably one of the rowdiest times of any that I remember in Montgomery. What about you?
Oh, no, absolutely. I mean, they ended up, let's say, they protested outside the state house. Then they had a, what do they call it, a lie-in, a sit-in, where they brought in the biggest, giantest people they could possibly find. I make up words as I go, so it's okay. and they laid in front of the doors. So for all week there's these, because one a couple of times it was moms for immigration, and then it was moms with babies, and they brought in the cutest little kids in the world, and we were the meanest. And then when they decided they were all going to lay in front of the chamber doors and block the hallways, they brought people that looked like NFL linemen, so that security would have to, drag them out the hallway and put them in the elevator. And they did spell my name right on the signs, and didn't they protested at my church on a Sunday morning, and I had to be taken off to security because nobody really knew what would happen when a bunch of people, more people protested at my church against me than show up to Joe Biden's rallies.
Wow. Well, that's not saying much.
That's only 3 people. Yeah, I'm sorry.
I mean, his COVID protocol rallies were epically anticlimactic.
10 times more people showed up than at a Biden rally. How's that?
Well, but I remember, too, I was saying a moment ago, right before you came on the air, that I remember trying to, in the Senate, for our listeners' benefit, when it's time to vote on a bill, they sound the chimes, which is like an electronic chime, and that means come down the hall and get here for your vote. So I'm going down the hall for a vote, and all these protesters are blocking the halls, locking their elbows, trying to keep us from going to vote on bills. And literally, I'm getting elbowed in the ribs, and security's having to move people out of the way, and it's just it was nuts.
Oh, can you imagine if the press had been on our side? What that would have been called? I'm thinking maybe, words popped in my head, insurrection. I mean, some of those elbows in the sides, those are assaults. I mean, it's just, but back then it was basically, we're just getting what we deserve.
Well, and here's the thing, though. House Bill 56, the way I describe it, was literally just the state of Alabama finally saying, you know what, federal government, if you won't do your job, we'll just do it for you. And all we were doing was being willing to enforce federal law and make it a state application of what federal law already is supposed to be doing.
Oh, that's exactly right. It was amazing how there were all these debates about what we were trying to do. And yes, we did look around the country, and basically anything that anybody was trying to do, we incorporated it because different states were trying to mirror different parts of the federal law. And you're an attorney, so the legal argument was, hey, look, we will just say in our state law exactly what the federal law is, but we'll put it in our books.
Yeah.
We'll mirror it almost word for word, and that way no one can say it's unconstitutional, et cetera.
Well, they did anyway.
They absolutely did, and that's what I tell people about the courts is, some of the people that helped, I think of Kobach out of Kansas, who I think is either going to be their lieutenant governor or – what is he going to be now? I think he just got elected, but his argument a lot of times was, look, we're saying what the court has said. The court has said you can do this and this, but you can't do this. So we will agree with them, and then when it goes before the court, they'll look and see that this appellate court said this, and the Supreme Court said this, and these are the exact words. Therefore, we're right. And even at that time, I was like, you put a lot more credit in people to be consistent than I do.
Well,
and so they all fell down on basically it's the federal government's job to enforce immigration law, and if we don't want to help you do it, you can't do it yourself.
Yeah, and the usual suspects. Judge Myron Thompson got involved, and then we also had Judge Sharon Blackburn, and then it did go up to the 11th Circuit Court of Appeals, which put several provisions on hold too while they examined constitutionality. But the reality was, here's the thing. I've got a. By the way, I did pull this from Wikipedia, so I go ahead and take a grain of salt on the things that I was there for.
That's true.
Anyway, Alabama law would have allowed then that police who had a reasonable suspicion that a person during an otherwise lawful stop might be illegal could check their legal status. There's one. They couldn't receive public benefits if they were illegals. They couldn't attend a publicly owned college or university if they were illegals. School officials in K through 12 had to determine if their students there were illegals so that we could keep a roster.
Which was straight from a federal judge's ruling in Texas.
I believe it. I mean, it's just and it had things like prohibiting the transport or harboring of illegals, requiring the use of the E-Verify program. I mean, I'm running the gamut, going, why is this scary? And you and I were talking yesterday briefly, and so here we were. Just Alabama, just being, trying to say, here's a solution. We'll just do what you said you would do, and you're not. And we got lampooned, and now you got DeSantis and Ducey and the governor from Texas, Abbott. That literally are like heroes right now for doing what we said we were trying to do in 2011.
Right. No, I remember we had discussions openly in caucus meetings about, hey, look, why don't we just say that if we catch people in the state illegally, we'll put them on a bus. We were going to send them to D.C., maybe to their consulate or to, and man, I thought people would die right there in the caucus meeting. We're going to be the biggest rednecks. This is going to be terrible. I can't believe you even say that. And now DeSantis and Abbott are like heroes and the most original thinkers and creative. And I'm like, what in the world has happened? But we were right years ago, and we were just a little bit ahead of our time.
We were a little bit ahead of our time, and I'm still proud of it. I mean, I even see things like on social media. If I dare say something about it, somebody come back with, "Well, that was all ruled unconstitutional. You didn't know what you were doing." Yeah, I did know what I was doing. Just the courts didn't agree with the idea of actually doing it.
Well, and they actually left a lot of it alone.
They did.
But they just, and you know how the press is. All you got to do is have one thing, and they're going to run and say, oh, it's all unconstitutional. And then they're not going to explain, well, why did they say it? Well, because they're supposed to be enforcing the law. I tell you the interesting one. I know you want to talk about that in Alabama, but it's interesting to me that some of the western states, the true border states, are beginning to claim an invasion.
Yes.
And that is copying language out of the Constitution. And I can't think of hundreds of thousands of people pouring into the country as anything other than an invasion. So that's a pretty good step right there.
It is, and I'll be honest with you. I don't know if you heard me say this earlier, if you were listening, but I did a monologue on my show. I don't know when it's been, a few months back, and I compared the historical accounts for why they believe the Roman Empire fell, what those causes were compared to what we see nowadays. One of the things that some historians believe caused the fall of Rome was they could no longer control their borders, and there was a mass migration of non-Roman citizens who overwhelmed their systems. And
Roman leadership actually said things. I'm sure they said it in Latin, so I couldn't understand them. But it was, hey, we've got jobs that Romans won't do. We need people to do our work.
Yep, probably.
And I'm like, wow.
And there were
Nothing's new.
probably others who were saying, "Could you just build a wall?"
Hey, the Chinese have a wall. Can't we build a wall?
Good Lord. All right. Hey, listen, Scotticus, can you hang on a minute? We'll take a break and we'll come right back and wrap this up. Is that good with you?
Absolutely. Look forward to it.
All right, man. Hey, listen, we're on right now with former state senator Scott Beeson, who has his own show, Scott Beeson Radio, on WXJC. He also, by the way, I forgot to mention earlier, co-hosts a podcast on 1819. Anyway, he and I were neck deep, mostly because he had the bill. He carried a bill called House Bill 56 back in 2011 when Alabama was trying to stand in the gap on illegal immigration. Yeah, we were called rubes and rednecks then. How do you like us now? Phil Williams, Rightside Radio. We'll be right back. And we are back. Phil Williams, Rightside Radio, covering all of North Alabama. Solid conservative, just plain right, making it cool to be a conservative. Hey, we're on right now. We're still on number one of the Triple Dipper, the border crisis. And my buddy Scott Beeson, who is a former state senator from Senate District 17, which is Jefferson and St. Clair counties. He also now hosts Scott Beeson Radio on WXJC out of the Birmingham area, and he hosts a podcast for 1819. Scott, let me ask you a question.
Ask me one. Hey, don't forget, if you're outside of Birmingham, you can listen at scottbeesonradio.com from 9 to 12, Monday through Friday.
Shameless plug, but I'm for it.
You got it, brother. Absolutely.
All right, listen. So when you were carrying this bill, all right? And,
yes.
And, man, isn't it funny how the old vernacular comes back, carrying the bill? That was how we used to call it. But when you were carrying this bill, you and Mickey Hammond from the House, were you getting called by other states who were like, man, that's pretty cool. We want to know how you're doing that. What do you got in that bill? And did anybody else take it up?
A number of people from around the country called. I mean, it got to the point where my secretary would just take the calls, and she would just go ahead and send them copies and that kind of stuff. A number of conservatives around the state, around the country. It didn't take long for word to get out through the entities that were trying to do things about illegal immigration on a national level to let people know, hey, this is one of the best bills in the country. It checks all the boxes. It does what most of the experts say the states ought to try. And I think that's a little bit of why I was so frustrated with the press here in Alabama, of course, and other places, who just acted like, you said it before the break, we didn't know what we were doing. Yeah. The court struck it down, so it was unconstitutional. Well, the only reason there was any question is the founding fathers, et cetera, never envisioned a group of people in our country who would think it would be a great idea for hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of thousands of people to just stream over our southern border without us knowing who they are, why they are, what diseases they may have, where they're going. I mean, they had no idea
are they
we would
criminals?
ever have
Do they have
leadership
ill
that would
intent?
do what we're doing.
Are they trafficking people? Are they trafficking drugs? Are they, all of it? Yes.
Yes. You talked about it being a border crisis.
Yep.
It legitimately is a crisis for the Republic, but for the folks on the left, it's not a crisis. This is a border opportunity. I mean, they are absolutely for this. That's why they lie to us every day and say it's not a crisis. I mean, you hear my workers say the border's under control, the border's secure. They want this, and it's almost beyond my imagination that that Americans can want this, but I mean, it's bad when the mayor of New York City is saying, "Whoa, hold up, we can't take this anymore."
Gavin Newsom,
it's bad.
Gavin Newsom literally saying, "I went to the border and I believe it's going to overwhelm our systems." Like, where have you been for the last few years?
Yeah, he's billions and billions and billions of dollars overwhelmed, and now he's decided they're almost at their limit.
Yeah, it's madness. But the thing that I look at and realize is true is that at some level, this becomes a thing that becomes bipartisan. I really believe that we're seeing it. We got Representative Cuellar from down in Texas who's had it. We've got Mark Kelly from Arizona who's saying stop the madness. And so I think some of they recognize where their constituents are, and there's beginning to be a little bit of pushback. But somewhere along the way, it's simply just a matter of if you won't do it, then states have a 10th Amendment obligation to do it for you, federal government, and that's where we're at.
That is absolutely right, and that's what I thought the position of the state of Alabama even should have been way back when they said, "Hey, you can't do these things." And I thought at the time we should say, "Look, we're being invaded," and I haven't looked back at that piece of legislation, the Beeson-Hammond. What it was? There's a super long name for it. It's like Beeson-Hammond Taxpayer Protection Act or something.
Yeah.
But when you go back and look at that, almost all the things we were doing were simply trying to stop making Alabama families, pay for the effects of illegal immigration.
Yeah.
And because we have enough challenges, our families have enough financial issues, and they're trying to save up for their kids' school or just pay the bills and all that kind of stuff. And to have to pay for other folks when we're already challenged, it makes no sense whatsoever. And, these states are going to have to stand up and say, look, we're going to do it. And if you don't like it, then you better come and stop us. And that's really that line that the federal government, for all the huff and puff that they have, that's a line that I think they'll be a little bit nervous about. I mean, who are they going to send? Never mind. Don't get me started. I know you're a military guy, but those entities are slipping away too.
Well, and just the other day, and the thing that I'm looking to see how it really goes, because it's going to be split. We're going to have a split Congress and Senate. And by the way, brother, we got about 45 seconds left. But
go ahead. That's fine.
I had Congressman Barry Moore, on the show the other day, and he said that literally they're already planning for the impeachment process of Secretary Mayorkas. And I hope it's true. Even if they don't get it through a divided Senate, the idea of holding the hearings and bringing some level of transparency and accountability to this process, to me, is extremely important.
I agree. And I hope the rhinos in Washington, I hope they finally realize it. All the games were cute and all the compromise was cute for the last couple of decades, but it is, it's cutting time, and they better stand up and be strong, or we're going to be in a really, really world of hurt.
Well, Scott Beeson, appreciate you, man. Thanks for being in the fight for so long. Appreciate the fact that you're still on the air. And tell them again where they can find you with your shameless plug.
The shameless plug, scottbeesonradio.com. If you go there, you can find the stations in Birmingham that you can listen to us on from 9 to 12 every day. And then there's a replay from 7 to 10, so you can hear me twice daily if you want to.
And then your 1819 podcast.
It's called Alabama Unfiltered, and we're having thousands of people watch it. We've been, I can't remember if we finally got completely banned from YouTube or not, but that's a badge of honor.
As it is. All right, Scott. Merry Christmas to you, brother. We'll talk again soon.
Yes, sir. Merry Christmas to y'all.
All right, folks. That was good. I enjoy having somebody on who was in the fight and still in the fight. All right, listen. Phil Williams, Rightside Radio. Coming back, we're switching gears, CRT and education. We'll be right back. And we are back. Phil Williams, Rightside Radio, covering down on some ground across the northern half of our state. I'm talking about this show is down south of Birmingham, up north of Huntsville, Tuscaloosa, back over to Gaston, parts of Georgia, Tennessee, and Mississippi thrown in just for good measure. Well, hey, listen, we're about to wrap up this section on the border crisis, and I think I've got one call. Is that Allie? Allie from Athens is on line one. How are you doing, my friend?
I'm doing well, and I will make this quick. Having lived in that situation, one of the things that people don't mention very often is the actual danger that the people who are coming are in themselves.
Yeah.
When we lived at the orphanage, I found a man on the side of the mesa who had been beaten by his fellow travelers. And I patched him up, I gave him some water, I led him to Christ. But this is a nightmare for everybody, not just the people of the United States.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. I mean, last I saw, there were well over 800 deaths on the southern border just in the last year, and one sheriff says they find a body in the Rio Grande in his area every day.
Yeah, when we were there, the summer before we got there, there were 44 people who were found dead in the back of a truck. They'd been abandoned by the coyotes and had been locked in. It's not just a security issue for the United States. That's obviously the most important. But these people are being taken advantage of on so many levels, especially the children.
You're so right, my friend. Hey, thanks for the call. Appreciate it. Merry Christmas to you.
You're welcome, sir. You too. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. All right, well, tell you what, I'm going to go ahead and switch gears. We're going to move to the number 2 on the Triple Dipper, CRT in education. So, listen, what caught my attention this morning, and Boomer, by the way, I'm going to be using, I think it's audio clip number 2. Yeah, the one that has the lady lecturer. Okay, you got that one? All right. So here's the deal. Here's what got my attention. You know, CRT was all the talk for a while, and then it doesn't seem to be as much in the forefront of the public discourse as it was earlier this year and some last year, but it's definitely still there. Make no mistake, it is not only there, it is there in spades. And it is literally, and by the way, if you hear diversity, equity, and inclusion, you might as well go ahead and assume that some of that is CRT, critical race theory. The idea that we are a systemically racist nation and that if you are of one race, you are likely to have always been a victim. You'll always be a victim. You're born a victim. And if you're of another race, then you are privileged, and you bear privilege. Doesn't matter whether you had to scratch out a living and pull yourself up by your bootstraps. No, you're privileged. And the idea that someone is either a victim or an oppressor from the moment they're born because of their skin color is antithetical to what we are as a country. Now, they may have circumstances that they were born into a rich family, born into a poor family, whatever the case may be. But to say that we are systemically a nation where your skin color totally determines whether you have any worth the moment you're born is just wrong. Well, it's all still out there on a daily basis. Well, the first story I've got here, the one that caught my attention, was a story on Fox News. Came out yesterday. A Washington University lecturer, you heard me, a Washington University medical school lecturer is warning the medical students not to debate her on systemic oppression. She will shut that down. So here's the thing. Remember the arguments for a while there? Oh, critical race theory. I don't know why they talk about it like it's some big thing that happens all the time. It's just a concept they teach for debate purposes in law schools. Bull crap. It's a thing they teach unequivocally as if it exists without you having the ability to argue that it doesn't. Case in point, this lady whose name is Reedy Roger, her last name, Caitlin Reedy Roger, was speaking to a class of medical students this past semester. We actually had to bleep out one of her words. You may hear a gap in the audio here in a second. But she serves as a member of the University of Washington, or Washington University's St. Louis Medical School's staff in charge of health equity and justice lessons. Health equity and justice lessons. And she gave a required lecture the other day that someone got a copy of and sent it out, and it made some news. So she literally tells folks, if you're debating the issue, I will shut you down. In other words, she's saying, what I'm about to tell you is the way it is. And she says, I'm passionate about this. Don't try and tell me it's not. You got the clip, Boomer? Go ahead and play it.
I have a really hard time being neutral around issues of systemic oppression. Okay? So oftentimes you will know how I feel. This does not mean that I am opposed to hearing other perspectives. So I would like to be very clear about that. I am always willing to engage in dialogue with folks that may disagree with me. Always. And I will not think less of you, nor will I try to fight you or debate you. And in fact, if you try to fight me or debate me, I will shut that down real fast. Okay? I will also say this. We don't talk about safe space. I don't know that this space is going to be safe. I cannot guarantee safety. I can guarantee support. I also will not ever claim to want to make you comfortable. In fact, I will often be trying to make you uncomfortable. And then the third pillar of health equity and justice is anti-racism. We are very firm in race being a social construct, and that has implications for how we practice medicine. That has implications for how we understand research, and that has implications for how we understand health disparity. And so when we are asking you all to engage in this, we're really asking you to think about your own identities and what that means to be anti-racist, which is an active stance in medicine that we know has a really bad racism issue, right?
Okay, stop. Medicine has a really bad racism issue. Racism, by the way, is a social construct. What the frick does that even mean? Race is a social construct. Oh, by the way, I am open to hearing other opinions if you have them, but if you debate me, I will shut that beep down. What? And by the way, required curriculum. Tell me why that helps someone to be a better dermatologist, ophthalmologist, oral surgeon. That's actually dental school, but for that matter, orthopedic surgeon. Why does that make someone a better? Well, because we're dealing with the systemic racisms that are inherent in the practice of medicine. What? Okay, see, here we go again. When you label it systemic racism, then automatically the only solution is that you acknowledge your position in that. It's systemic. It's so broad, you must acknowledge. And what does she call it? Your own identity and how that plays in. So this is what's happening in medical schools. Now, that's a lecturer for Washington University in St. Louis Medical School. In a mandatory class, it was what they called their gateway curriculums. That was recorded. I take it back. That was recorded very recently, but the curriculum came out in 2020. Oh, funny. What was that? Oh, yeah, that's right. That was the Summer of Love, 2020. That was the year that everything went crazy. So the gateway curriculum was implemented, literally, it says in the article here from Fox News, around the time of the George Floyd riots. It would require, quote, diversity and bias training for all searches and admissions processes, including student, resident, fellow, faculty, and staff positions. What does that mean? That means diversity and bias training is required just to be allowed to be admitted, just to be allowed to be a student, just allowed to be a resident. I'm just telling you, this is a dangerous step in the wrong direction. These are people that you want someone who's being trained to be the best possible medical practitioner they could be. But if you're going to limit who is able to attend because you've now decided that diversity, equity, and inclusion means it's not about who is the most qualified to go to medical school. It's about whether or not we have shown ourselves to be diverse and equitable and inclusive. Well, it's not just that one university. Story here also on Fox News, which is tearing up this subject right now, by the way. Also on Fox News came out in February of this year, critical race theory related ideas found in mandatory programs at 23 of the top 25 U.S. medical schools. Here we go. I'm not quoting you. Well, that one lady did it. Well, it's not a big deal, Phil. It's not like it's everywhere. Yep, apparently it's pretty much everywhere. At least 23 of America's 25 most prestigious medical colleges and universities have some form of mandatory student training or coursework on ideas related to critical race theory, according to the organization criticalrace.org, which monitors this curricula. Says the racialization of medical school education is troubling. It's one thing to recognize the health needs of different populations. It's entirely different to inject racial politics into medical care. Demanding that medical school students become activists is dangerous. So this is, by the way, this is not a biased, they didn't come in, this is a U.S. News ranking of the America's top medical schools and then a study of those. So they took the top 25 and they went and examined their posted curriculums. Of the top 25 colleges and universities, 23 had some form of mandatory training, and 21 of them offered materials by authors Robin DiAngelo and Ibram X. Kendi, whose books explicitly call for discrimination. All right, the study found that 16 of the top 25 medical schools have also declared that anti-racism, DEI, diversity, equity, inclusion, CRT, and or other similar elements will be embedded into the general curriculum of the university. Really? Yes. Among them is the University of Chicago, where first-year students must take a course in health equity, advocacy, and anti-racism. Why is it necessary to train medical students to be advocates for equity? Why is that? Where did that become a thing? And how much are they having to pay to add that to their curriculum in an already extensive course of studies? At the University of Michigan's medical school, the school's Anti-Racism Oversight Committee recommends that it, quote, incorporate critical race theory, health justice, and intersectionality framework into doctoring materials. That's a stated position. We're not making this up. It's not like, well, we thought we saw something on social media. No, this is their position. It's like libs of TikTok. We're just telling you what they're saying. What time we got here, right, Boomer? I'll tell you what, Boomer, I'm going to take a break right now. We're going to take a break, and we come back, I've got another audio clip for you, and then top of the hour, we're going to be talking with State Representative Ed Oliver. He's been working on divisive concepts legislation for the state of Alabama. We'll talk with him. Phil Williams, Rightside Radio. Y'all stay tuned. We'll be right back. And we are back. Phil Williams, Rightside Radio. Solid conservative, just plain right. Coming up top of the hour, we should be having a call from State Representative Ed Oliver. He was one of the ones working on the divisive topics bill, divisive subjects, I believe. Anyway, the bottom line is things you shouldn't be talking about, divisive concepts. That's what it was. And so we'll be talking with him very soon about codifying the fact that our state school board has said we won't allow critical race theory in schools. Okay, cool. That's not codification, though. That's a board decision that can be rescinded at any given time. So moving back, though, to what's happening in medical schools and then jumping back over into Alabama schools, I will say this, by the way, if you're not familiar, very interesting, but two of the founders of critical race theory are actually teachers, lecturers, professors at the University of Alabama right now. They are. I'll cover that later. But let me do this, Boomer. You got that other clip, that audio clip? So here's the thing. A Dr. Stanley Goldfarb, he's a member of a group called Do No Harm. And they are basically a group of doctors that are trying hard to push back against, woke policies and these kind of critical race theory and DEI matters being infiltrated into mandatory curriculum in medical schools. And he did an interview on Fox that I found fascinating just a couple weeks ago. There's apparently been a recent study by the Association of American Medical Colleges, and that it shows literally that diversity, equity, and inclusion policies have now gained a foothold in medical schools across the nation. And it recommends, by the way, it literally recommends, this study that is by the Association of American Medical Colleges, it recommends that they have promotion and tenure policies that specifically reward faculty scholarships and service on DEI topics. And it goes on to say, well, you'll hear about this audio clip. I tell you what, Boomer, let's do this. Here is Dr. Stanley Goldfarb responding to a question about this very thing. Go ahead and play it.
To save my life. Why would diversity, equity, and inclusion matter one bit in that OR?
Well, good morning. Of course it wouldn't matter at all. And that's exactly what our organization is trying to push back against these standards, because they really don't speak to what physicians really do, which is to care for sick people rather than become either social workers or social warriors in a quest to change characteristics of American life. And these standards are incredibly political, ideological, and really will do nothing to improve the health care of any group in America, including African American patients at whom it's really aimed.
Let's drill down to the specifics. They are shocking. Here are the new standards. They include understanding oppression, white privilege, social risk factors, race as a social construct, and as if that wasn't bad enough, colonialism. What will this do to the training of our next generation of doctors?
Yes, and I think what your audience is seeing now is the fact that critical race theory has now come to medical school, and the concerns that have been expressed about that for secondary education and even primary education now comes to medical education. And it will do nothing to improve the health of the American people and do nothing to improve the health of the target audience here. This is an idea to create physicians to be advocates for various ideological positions and to encourage them to vote for candidates that are going to support these positions rather than a series of issues that are going to improve the way healthcare is delivered, which is really what our organization is concerned with. And I must say our organization is interested in hearing from individuals in healthcare who have seen some of these activities go on in their schools and their hospitals. And we've really benefited from tips that they've sent in to donoharmmedicine.org about these kinds of activities.
Stop it there. So here's the bottom line. He went on to say, Dr. Goldfarb did in that interview, he said at some point patients will be viewed as members of a group based on skin color rather than as individuals. And diversity has been elevated above merit and achievement as the basis for choosing med students and promoting faculty. This must lead to a decline, then, in the quality of physician workforce and undermines a foundational idea of America that you can achieve your goals through hard work and talent. Exactly so. But, okay, you're hearing this major influx of CRT and DEI initiatives that are being considered, mandatory curriculum in medical schools across the nation. So much so that an organization like his, Do No Harm, has sprung up to try and push back on this. But then you've got what's happening in our schools right here in Alabama. What's happening in our schools? What's happening for our kids? Is this going on in our education processes? Well, you know everything that happened last year with the bill in Florida. They got lampooned and called the "Don't Say Gay" bill. Well, it wasn't anything about that. It was basically a bill that dealt with not sexualizing children. Well, we were able to pass something like that in the legislature in Alabama last year. Didn't get near the attention it did in Florida. Okay, fine, we still passed it. And yet, what we're also looking at is our own state school board under a lot of pressure, because I'll be honest, I think part of it was they were feeling the pressure because the legislature didn't want to deal with it. Well, the legislature sort of foisted it back on the school board. The school board held a meeting in October of last year, our state school board, and they voted at that time to say that they will not have critical race theory policies and curriculum in the public schools. That is not the force of law. That's a matter of policy. We're going to come right back. State Representative Ed Oliver will be on to talk to us about whether or not we're going to see a codification of a divisive concepts bill in the state of Alabama in the coming session. Phil Williams, Rightside Radio. Y'all stay tuned. We'll be right back.
You're listening live to Rightside Radio with Phil Williams. It's hard to go wrong when you're on the right side. Rightside Radio. Solid, conservative, and just plain right.
Alabama's syndicated news talk leader, Rightside Radio. Phil Williams here live in the Rightside studios for hour number 3 today. The local, the state, the national, man, we cover down on all the issues. And like the dude just said, solid, conservative, and just plain right. Boomer, how are we in hour number 3 already? I don't understand.
Man, it must be the cold weather.
Makes things feel faster, I guess. I don't know.
I guess so.
All I know is it's been a full show and just got fuller. So let me welcome somebody to the show. State Representative Ed Oliver. He currently represents House District 81 from down around Lake Martin. He has been elected. I guess he was elected first in 2018. Right when I was leaving, he was coming in. He has his BA from the University of Alabama. He spent 15 years as an Army aviator, and so appreciate your service, State Representative Ed Oliver. Thanks for coming on.
Hey, I'm delighted to be here, and thanks for letting me participate in your program today.
Well, thank you, sir. And it was late notice, and that means the world that you were able to make yourself available with me texting you late in the day. So thank you very much for that.
Oh, you're absolutely welcome, and this is a topic I just love to talk about, so I'm certainly thankful you did.
Well, I appreciate that. You know, so what sparked this was, earlier in the show, I've been talking about the fact that 23 of 25 of the top medical schools in the nation are now seen to have CRT curriculum, most of which are mandatory in their curriculums, and it makes no sense. But filter that down to what's happening in our state colleges and universities and our K-12 system. It can get kind of ugly. Last year, our state school board did pass a resolution saying they want divisive topics out, no CRT, but that's not the force of law. And so my understanding is you've been working on a divisive concepts bill for a while now. Tell us what you're thinking.
Well, last year we actually passed a divisive concepts bill through the House of Representatives, and it failed in the Senate primarily just because we ran out of time with it. It will be the first bill out in the legislature this next session. I expect it to pass easily. Senator Barfoot will be carrying it in the Senate. He carried it last year, did an excellent job with it. And a lot of it was educating people. CRT is one of those things, critical race theory, that we actually have the authority in the legislature to do something about it in the schools that we fund. Now, when we look at college, there's already been a few court decisions that have made it very, very difficult, and it's First Amendment issues that really make it difficult to do much enforcement with anti-CRT legislation at the college level. However, that doesn't relieve us of our duties we have in the elementary and high school.
Right. Well, so let me ask you this. When you say divisive concepts, and we've been talking about what CRT is, the very idea that you would ever label somebody by birth, by skin color, as an oppressed or an oppressor, as privileged or as overwhelmed or underprivileged, is just wrong. It's antithetical to who we are as a nation. But that being said, there's more to it in terms of divisive concepts. What all is included in this bill, and how do you anticipate it being enforced?
Well, the enforcement part comes down to money, and that's money that the legislature, which a lot of folks may not like it, but it's the way it is, because you spend your tax dollars on public education, that is one place the legislature has oversight because of that. And we actually have the authority to affect curriculum. Now, Alabama, as everyone should be aware, is that mamas and daddies at the school board level, they are the ones that should be riding herd on what their local school board's doing. And if they are engaged and if they're taking part, they can do that. But until somebody makes people aware of what is actually getting pushed down to their students, and it starts at the colleges, and it's the educators teaching the educators that in turn end up in your school, that's where the problem starts. And ultimately, the reason the left wants to push CRT amongst little kids is simply they want to sexualize them. They want to racialize them at an early age to make them easy to manage. Pure and simple. I hate to say a way to create more left wingers that are woke and will do the things that the left wants them to do, but that's exactly what it is. And it's to divide people, to make groups fight each other so they're easier to manage.
And I agree. Factionalization is exactly what they do. And so let me ask you this, Representative Oliver. If does the bill spell out what is considered a divisive topic, and who is the arbiter of whether someone stepped over the line? I mean, I know you can see curriculum, but sometimes there's a chance for a. And by the way, there's wonderful teachers in our educator network. I mean, we have some amazing people who are following a calling, and I recognize that. But every once in a while, you'll have someone who goes in there with their own agenda, and they may not have a curriculum, but they inject their own biases. So how is this going to be? Basically, how is it measured? How do you determine whether a divisive concept was actually taught?
Well, in the bill, the divisive concepts are listed that we consider divisive concepts, and I apologize for not having them in front of me. I'm sitting in my car. But they're explained, and you hit most of them. There is, of course, the fact that a person is born a certain color determines what his outcome in life will be, and that he can't change that. We don't believe that's true. The fact that slavery was anything but an aberration. The fact that a child now should be blamed for something that happened generations ago, and it goes on and on like that. It's the things that are absolutely absurd to take from 200 years ago and try to translate into modern times and blame someone for, which is basically what CRT does.
Well, and do you have is there a process by which a teacher would be required to, what's the accountability factor there? Is a school board locally required to take action?
The accountability factor, the way we wrote the legislation last year was that it went from the chain of command. I'm an Army guy, so that's the way I relate to things. All right, so the chain of command is you have the teacher, then you have the principal, who has the chance to intervene, and then you have the school board. And once it gets to the school board can take whatever action they want to.
Okay, all right.
Up to and including termination.
Well, okay, and that would that include a tenured teacher who stepped over the line, as you're saying?
It could, yes.
Okay.
Now and remember, tenure, you can still get fired for cause.
Absolutely. You're allowed an appeal process and representation and all that kind of stuff, but I'm aware. Well, I tell you what, and so you're going to have this bill coming up. Do you intend to pre-file the bill, or are you just going to drop it in when the session starts?
No, sir. It'll be pre-filed, and it should be one of the very first, if not the first bill out. And we've got the bill written right now. We made some changes from last year. Other states have been working on this as well. Eagle Forum has helped us. They've provided an attorney. We've had great participation from several conservative organizations, as well as the First Amendment folks, FIRE. They've actually helped us with this.
Outstanding.
So the language in the bill is good. In high school, in junior high and elementary school, I think we're in great shape. Post-secondary is where I'm most concerned at this point. In part two of this effort, of course, would be to look at diversity, equity, and inclusion training, which is infiltrated into every school we have.
Yeah.
And literally has just taken over education. And it's sort of the dumbing down of post-secondary education. So we're trying to do a good lead into that, but first we're trying to get this curbed amongst our younger kids first.
Well, State Representative Oliver, I want you to keep us posted on this because we'll have you back on to talk about it once the debate begins. Let me ask you this before you go. It's a little bit of a tangent, but it relates. I've got my own decades of military service as well, and you yourself were an Army guy. In all your years of serving, did you see systemic racism in the ranks as we're being told nowadays?
Never.
Yeah.
Ever.
Yeah. I agree. Never did. Did I see the one-off occasion where someone said something off-color? Yes. But did I ever see a systemic issue? Nope. Never once.
Never. Nothing. I was an inspector general, and systemic issues were my specialty.
Wow.
Never in the 4 years I served as an inspector general, I don't think I ever had a race issue.
Well, State Representative Ed Oliver, House District 81, thank you for your time today. Appreciate you making yourself available on short notice, and we look forward to hearing more about this divisive concepts bill when it comes up.
Well, I encourage your listeners to get involved in local school boards and see what's going on, and that's the way we fight this. We do it at the grassroots local level.
Outstanding. Absolutely. All right. Sir, you have a good day. Merry Christmas.
Yes, sir. Merry Christmas.
All right, good interview. I'm glad we got him at the last minute, Boomer. That was good timing. He literally texted me like 45 minutes to an hour ago and said, "Yeah, I can be there." And I was like, "Oh, good. How about
awesome.
that? That is great. I love it when public. By the way, folks, let me just take an aside here before the break and just tell you, public officials are far more accessible than you may or may not. Or you may already know this, but many people don't. They're especially in our state legislature. These guys and ladies are making decisions every day that affect us. In fact, sometimes I like to say that more impacts our life out of what comes from Montgomery than what comes out of D.C. And that being said, the Alabama State Legislature is technically a part-time job, meaning all these people have a life back home. They only go to Montgomery periodically. And other than that, they're eating in the same restaurants, going to the same churches, shopping in the same grocery stores. They're right there in your neighborhoods. They may be jogging down your street. All said and done, get to know who they are because they are making crucial decisions for each of us. And there's some good men and women down there that are doing it for all the right reasons. All right, Boomer, take us to the break. We will come right back and continue this topic, CRT and education. We'll cover down on some things that, what about the University of Alabama faculty? What did they say when it was all being attacked last year? It was a threat to their way to teach? Yeah, we'll talk about it. Phil Williams, Rightside Radio. Y'all stay tuned. We'll be right back. And we are back. Phil Williams, Rightside Radio, solid conservative, just plain right, saving the world one soundbite at a time. Hey, folks, listen, I got to tell you about the folks, the lawyers over there at Riley and Jackson Law Firm in Birmingham. So Riley and Jackson Law Firm, they're based in Birmingham, but they work all over the entire state. So you may have heard me talk about them. This Camp Lejeune water contamination thing, they've got like 5 lawyers working that very issue, and they've picked up a number of our Right Side listeners as clients because they heard about this discussion on the show. So, yeah, Camp Lejeune water contamination, if you were at Camp Lejeune, North Carolina, as a service member, as a dependent, as a a contractor, for any period of time between 1953 and 1987, that's a long period of time, anywhere in that window, 53 to 87, you may qualify for some monetary relief because of the 19 different illnesses that have been attributed to that water contamination. Riley and Jackson's working on that. They also want me to tell you they are working on a case right now that involves firefighting foam. So if you were a firefighter or you were in the military using firefighting foam, then you may have been exposed to a carcinogenic version of firefighting foam that is got some pretty bad after effects. And so I'm just telling you, Riley and Jackson, they're working on that. If you want to know more, a phone call is all it takes. They will not charge you for the call. They'll consult with you. You'll talk to a real person. They'll let you know what's up and whether or not you could qualify. And they will not get paid unless they get a recovery for you. So here's their number. I'm about to give it to you. Riley and Jackson. The number is 205-879-5000. That's Riley and Jackson, 205-879-5000. And these folks, by the way, these are friends of mine. I know them personally, and they're not just good on the law. They're good on the politics, too, if you know what I'm saying. So, yeah, give them a call and tell them you heard about it on Right Side Radio, 205-879-5000. No representation made. The quality of legal service before was greater than the quality of legal service for the lawyers. There you go. All right. Hey, listen, let's take a quick aside here. I'm going to stay with this CRT and education. We're not going to be done with this yet. But I got to tell you, there's breaking news. Just broke a moment ago that apparently there's 19 different states that have now filed a petition with the Supreme Court asking that Title 42 on the southern border, that Title 42 remain in effect. Now, I don't know this for a fact, but I did see where Governor Greg Abbott said in one of his statements, if it's not about COVID, it can be about any number of health issues, not the least of which is the drug trafficking, the fentanyl crisis coming across our border. Title 42 helps them to maintain some measure of control of the border, some, limited, but some. Well, these 19 states have petitioned, and just moments ago, it came out that Chief Justice John Roberts has frozen Title 42. It will not be rescinded this week. That's major news. In other words, it continues in effect until the court lifts it, while the whole thing is being reviewed. I'm going to be honest with you. I'm sure that the Customs and Border Patrol is breathing a sigh of relief right now. Mayor of El Paso, the governor of Texas, the governor of Arizona, they're breathing a sigh of relief because at least they've still got one arrow in the quiver, and that's a big deal. I'm just amazed by that. So I'm glad Chief Justice John Roberts, breaking news, just literally said, nope, freeze it. Hold on here. We're going to review this first. There's that. Also, the breaking news, but is it really? I mean, Boomer, you got that womp wah thing? You ready? January 6th Commission. Ready? Play it. Is anybody surprised that the January 6th Committee has referred Donald Trump to the Department of Justice on criminal charges? Is anybody at all surprised? In fact, I feel like it warrants 2 playings of the horn, so go ahead and play it again. Yeah, anticlimactic is the word. So, bottom line, though, Donald Trump has been referred to the Department of Justice by the much vaunted and heralded January 6th Committee. Pray tell, what possibly could come from this? Probably nothing. Mike Pence is already on record right away as saying this is a really bad idea. and just this is really not good for us. It's divisive. It's not necessary. And it's not going to be fruitful. But they're just determined. And by the way, they've also got to prove that their existence over the last year and a half has been warranted. What did they prove, by the way? How much of our tax dollars did they waste? How many people have had their lives ruined? How much time did they take on TV talking about, and by the way, everybody on there just hated Trump to begin with. This was a foregone conclusion. They were going to get to today to do what they just did, but it took them a freaking year and a half, and ain't nobody surprised. It's like, wow. Can you go ahead and just tell me again? Oh, there it is. Play the horns, Boomer. I'm just saying. January 6th committee, can we please see them go to the House? In fact, some of them are. Oh, that's right. Adam Kinzinger and Liz Cheney didn't get reelected. Ha! There's that. All right, we're going to come right back. It looks like, Boomer, it looks like it's going to be a double dipper day, man.
Double dipper day.
I'm feeling the double dipper today.
Yeah, we need to spend time on the live free or die.
Well, we do. I'll make it number one tomorrow.
Oh, okay.
Did I come out the gate and say that?
You just did.
I labeled it.
You labeled it.
All right. Listen, we're taking a break right now. We're coming right back. Coming into the last half hour of today's show, we're going to be finishing up this discussion on critical race theory in education. Yeah, it's a divisive topic. Yeah, it's wrong. Phil Williams, Rightside Radio. We'll be right back. And we are back. Phil Williams, Rightside Radio, covering all of North Alabama. I'm talking about down south of Huntsville to way up north of, or down south of Birmingham to way up north of Huntsville, Tuscaloosa, back over to Gadsden, parts of Georgia, Tennessee, Mississippi, thrown in just for good measure. Proof that I don't read that, by the way. That's something that rolls off the tongue, and every once in a while the words get jumbled. Hey, listen, I'm in this next section here of CRT and education. Before I do that, though, I got to tell you, man, cold weather is coming. Cold weather is coming. All the more reason to have a hot cup of coffee at Just Love Coffee Cafe. Boomer's laughing at how I did that. You like that segue?
That was good.
But it's true, though. So if you are sitting there on a cold morning coming up and you got to go to work and it's 10 degrees outside, which they're saying it's going to be, by the way, Just Love Coffee Cafe might be the place to stop on the way in and just go ahead and go all in, brother, and get yourself one of those extra large cappuccinos. Like, this is not the nasty cup of coffee from the nasty coffee pot in the break room down the hall at work. No. This is like, Charlene calls these the treat coffees, the lattes, the espressos, the cappuccinos. Good stuff. But they also have, by the way, award-winning dry roast coffees. They can grind the beans fresh, light roast, medium roast, dark roast. Now, they have amazing foods, so you can stop there for breakfast, get something for lunch, have a break during the day. But all I'm saying is this, cold weather, hot coffee. Oh, yeah. Just Love Coffee Cafe has 2 locations in our listening area, one on Hughes Road in Madison and the other on South Parkway in Huntsville. Check them out. And please, when you go, by the way, tell them you heard about it on Rightside Radio. I get the biggest kick out of them telling me when I stop by, hey, some of your people come by here. Anyway, appreciate that. All right. Critical race theory in education. First of all, I mentioned earlier, if you did not know, I mean, we hear all the time about people like Ibram X. Kendi and others right now who are promoting critical race theory. CRT is not new. CRT has been around since the 70s. Critical race theory has actually been taught by 2 of its founders who currently are on staff at the University of Alabama. Go figure. Richard Delgado and his wife, Jean Stefancic, are both UA law professors. And they wrote their book, Critical Race Theory and Introduction, which first was published in 1995, but it's on multiple reprints with the New York University Press right now. So, yeah, they are professors right here in the state of Alabama at UA's law school, and they are considered leading scholars on the concepts of critical race theory. Not against it, as in promoting it as a thing that exists. Anyway, I find that interesting. I'm not calling for their banning or their removal or something like that. I do wonder how many members of their alumni association that give money to the law school know that the 2 founders of critical race theory are considered to be tenured professors there. But nonetheless, there it is. Critical race theory and diversity. You can go to the University of Alabama website, and there it is. That being said, the University of Alabama's faculty got real up in arms last year. So here's the thing. There was a vote that took place in our state school board. On October 14th-ish last year, 2021, the state school board voted 7-2, meaning there were 2 who dissented to this, but voted 7-2 to essentially ban so-called critical race theory from being touted or taught in our public schools. Okay, cool. That's our school board, so it's our K-12 systems. They're saying they don't want it in. Now, that doesn't codify with the impact of law, and that can be changed without a legislative process. So what we're talking about earlier with State Representative Ed Oliver, that codification would actually embed it in the law. It'd be statutory at that point, and far more enforceable and far more difficult for radicals to change later on. Okay, all that to say, last year, October 14th, 2021, I mean, they had activists down there. This story on AL.com. They had activists down there protesting. They had one lady whose name is Faya Rose Toure, I believe. I hope I'm saying that right. She's a longtime civil rights activist, gathered before the meeting and held up signs saying it's about critical race facts, not theory, and slavery and segregation still hurt black children. Discrimination is inexcusable. Slavery was wrong. Hear these things coming out of my mouth, all right? Don't try to say, this is that whitewash show, that white guy's talking on the... No, this is a common sense show where we talk about things and literally say, okay, you want to claim that, make sure you can stand by it. First of all, I will say this. I believe that no state has come further than Alabama. Once the cradle of the Confederacy, it became the cradle of the civil rights movement. Now, civil rights, there were movements that existed prior to, but the things that we think of now in terms of the historical context of the true civil rights movement, Martin Luther King, right there on Dexter Avenue Baptist Church in Montgomery, the Selma the Selma Bridge March across the Edmund Pettus Bridge. We've got the March to Montgomery with across that bridge. We've got Rosa Parks. These things all happened in Alabama. So the state that had the capital of the Confederacy at one time, where the Confederacy was born, literally became the state where civil rights truly, in the eyes of the majority of the world, was born. And we have, by the way, had our issues, and I know it. I'm not denying that. But don't tell me that we are a systemically racist state, because we're just not. I grew up here. I'm a product of the public schools, and I can just tell you, we're not. But that being said, protesters still want to say we are, and they came down there to the school board meeting October of 2021, and they protested, and they yelled, and they shouted epithets, and they claimed that the school board was in some way, regressing the state. But what they did was they took a step, and they said, we're not going to do this. We had people saying, well, in Germany, they teach the Holocaust as a model for progress and healing. Well, we don't not teach slavery. And we certainly don't extol the virtues of slavery. None of that happens. So the idea that we have to teach something different than the historical context and say that was bad and we don't ever want to be there again. No. We don't look at children and say, by the way, when you look at a small child and you tell them something about themselves as an adult, understand that sticks. And when you bless a child, they will feel blessed. And when you tell a child they can do anything, they'll know they can. And when you raise up a child in the way they should go, when they get old, they will not depart from it. But if you look at a child and tell them, hey, I hate it for you, but you were born a victim. You'll probably never be able to achieve because there's some people over there with a different color skin, and they're going to be your oppressors all your life. Go ahead and brace yourself. That's no way to raise a child. And by the way, there are people left and right in this nation who literally oppose that by virtue of their own existence. Dr. Ben Carson comes to mind, raised by a single mom who had to work 2 jobs to put he and his brothers through school. Look at him, a renowned surgeon who then went on to become a cabinet-level position in the Trump administration. Wow. Condoleezza Rice. Wow. I mean, just I could go on and on. That being said, the University of Alabama's faculty, they had themselves a moment last year, a moment after that school board meeting, a moment when they were like, what's going on? University of Alabama faculty, October 20th, 2021, AL.com again, debated how to handle legislative efforts that could impact the discussions of race equity and critical race theory. During a meeting of the Faculty Senate back then, a group that represents professors and has some power over curriculum and instructional decisions, several people voiced their concerns about recent state resolutions that affect K-12 classrooms. They had one, John Petrovich, an education professor, said, this is an existential threat to everyone in the room. It's cowardice and BS. And he's just, he's having himself a big breakdown. This fundamentally attacks what we're supposed to be about. Anyway, you get my point. Others in the room chimed in and believing that they should be allowed to teach critical race theory, at the very least as a concept. And by the way, no one says you cannot discuss whether critical race theory exists. The question then becomes, though, are you teaching it as unequivocal and fact, or are you teaching it as something that you need to be aware of? If you want to teach that critical race theory is a thing that some espouse while others disagree with, take that tack. But that's not what's happening. The Manhattan Institute did a major study, came out in October of this year, Headline from City Journal, which publishes the Manhattan Institute's documents and white papers. Headline: Yes, critical race theory is being taught in schools. Zach Goldberg wrote the piece where he took the article and kind of broke it all down, the research, the graphs. I've got it all in front of me. This is a multi-pager for the resources today. But he literally says, to what extent, if at all, are critical race theory and gender ideology being taught or promoted? With little data available and no agreement about what constitutes the teaching of critical social justice ideas, the answer has remained open to political interpretation. But he goes on to say, though, that when they commissioned their major study, the results were surprising, and they were not at all, in some way, impartial. Like, for instance, they did a study where they asked a large number of people, 18 to 20-year-old respondents, about whether they had ever been taught things in class about America being systemically racist or otherwise, and then they asked where they got their information. It's fascinating. I look at it right now. Here's the first question. America is a systemically racist country. Of those asked, the largest group was 36% said they were taught that it was in a class. Wow. 26% of them said that they heard this from an adult at their school. How about this? In America, white people have white privilege. 41% said yes, they believe that, and they had been taught this in a class. 25% said they at least heard it from an adult at their school. 35% of those who are asked, in America, white people have unconscious biases that negatively affect non-white people. They said yes. 35% said they were taught this in a class. 22% said they heard it from an adult at their school. It goes on and on like this. America is built on stolen land. 45% heard that in a class. America is a patriarchal society. 30% heard that in a class. Gender is an identity choice, regardless of your biological sex. 31% heard that in a class. The study goes on and literally walks down through the data. But the thing that is most significant to me is the fact that this is being taught in a class. These are kids saying, they're saying, that's where I heard it. I heard it, and it was taught to me. And I walked away with the understanding that's the way it is. And here's one for you. How about with regards to the information you received about critical race theory in school, 27% said they were taught that there were no arguments against that concept. 41% said they were taught that there were arguments against it, but that they were not respectable arguments. Wow. All right, so the bottom line here, I'll go to the end of the study and just tell you what it says. Here's the conclusions. First, the claim that CRT and gender ideology are not being taught is grossly misleading. More than 9 in 10 of the respondents reported some form of school exposure to CRT. And second, educators are presenting these ideas to students uncritically, meaning if they're presented, they're not being presented as perspectives, they're being presented as fact, and the kids are being told there's actually not even any defensible arguments against it. Overall, it says, the data appears to confirm many of the fears of anti-CRT activists that anecdotal and both data-driven critical race and gender is being taught in America's public schools across the board. Wow. Wow, wow, Booms. Wow. Take me to a break, man, while I recover. All right, folks, Phil Williams, Rightside Radio. Been a full day with only 2 dippers. Big doings. Phil Williams, Rightside Radio. Y'all stay tuned. We'll be right back. And we are back. Phil Williams, Rightside Radio, solid conservative, just plain right. Saving the world one soundbite at a time. Hey, listen, folks, I got to tell you real quick before we leave for this day. If you are looking for a job, and maybe you're headed home right now, it's go home time right now, and you're thinking, I am looking for a job or I'm looking for another job. Let me encourage you, go to zlausa.com. That's our friends at ZLA Solutions. I know them personally. They've been supporting the show since the day we went on the air. But ZLA Solutions is literally doing an epic good job at lining up jobs and people. So if you personally are looking for a job, go to their website, zlausa.com. They've got jobs posted on their website right now, major employer groups all over the northern part of our state. But if you're also an employer and you need to fill out the ranks of your workforce, man, that's part of their bread and butter. I mean, they do logistical solutions. They can help you with warehousing. They can do quality control and sorting and containment, all that kind of stuff. But their bread and butter, man, is staffing, temp or direct to hire. They can literally help you out. Blue collar, white collar, no collar, don't matter. They can do the recruiting, the background checks, the drug testing if necessary, all of it. They can get you the onesies and twosies or a whole shift of people. So yeah, ZLA Solutions at zlausa.com. Check them out and tell them you heard about it on Rightside Radio. I would appreciate it very much. Got some cool text in the text string there, Booms. So Chris from Gadsden tells me that obviously my life of privilege has kept me from seeing my own bias. I know Chris from Gadsden, and I know he is saying that with a grain of salt. I'm not worried about it. Jeff from Indiana says, no graduates of those woke medical schools ever going to lay a hand on him. Go woke, go broke. I get it. John from Pike Road just said his wife just finished a class at the University of Alabama so she could get her higher degree in education, and the class was all about inclusion and diversity. She said, no wonder students come out of college the way they do. Wow. There's a first-hand account right there. Thanks, John. Jay from Hartselle said, I think what's important is to understand that CRT exactly is that CRT is exactly that, a theory. It's not backed up by facts. It's nothing more than a hypothesis. You cannot take a few like-minded people and then force this on the masses. If this is allowed, then there'll be nothing off limits, and let our children be children. They only get to be one for a short while. On that January 6th committee, Michael from Sylacauga says January 6th committee is going to regret that when the time comes for discovery. Yeah, what he's saying there is the January 6th committee didn't allow testimony or cross-examination of witnesses. They just did their thing in their own way, and now they've basically handed a dud over to the Department of Justice. And if they ever try to bring criminal charges against Trump, he gets the opportunity for full-on discovery. He gets the opportunity for depositions, all of it. We'll see how that goes. John from Huntsville, it's absolutely critical that we get rid of critical race theory. I like the play on words, sir. Thank you very much. Leanne from Huntsville. Oh, Leanne from Huntsville just sent us pictures of her holding her Just Love coffee cup. So outstanding.
Yes.
That's right. Heard about it on Rightside Radio. There you go. Tyler from Huntsville is wanting Jeff from Indiana to know that he's headed his way. So I don't know if they're going to link up at Buc-ee's or what, but and then JT from Lacey Springs just said that he just found his lost shirt. It was his proud to be a Rightside ruffian shirt today. So they sent us a picture of that. Appreciate all of you. All right, man. I tell you what, this does not feel like 3 hours.
Did not feel like 3 hours today. It flew by.
Flew by. But, nothing but good. We need some more maple bacon donuts, by the way.
Ooh, we do. We need to get some of those before Christmas.
But you think so?
I think so.
By the way, I found out the bakery right next door to the studio actually makes those.
What?
Oh, yeah. The other night when we were talking, when we had the Rightside Christmas party.
Yeah.
I got to tell you, man, after you left, Charlene said, I've got something for you. I said, what, baby? And she pulled out, she had bought 3 maple bacon donuts. And she had them put away because she knew they'd be scarfed up if we left them out for the party.
That's awesome. I actually didn't know there was a bakery right next to us.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, man.
Oh, yeah. Right next. You can throw a rock to it.
Oh.
Don't throw rocks at it.
I won't throw rocks.
Yes, but they do make the maple bacon donuts, and yes, they were good. So my Saturday morning cup of coffee had a maple bacon donut attached to it.
And it was delicious.
I'm feeling rather robust now, but there you go. All right, folks, what a great day. Listen, we're back here tomorrow. We'll see if we can get all 3 dippers done tomorrow. You guys have an amazing night. Boomer and I back here tomorrow at 2. We'll see you then.